Howdy, welcome to Google Plus Week, the longest running show on Google Plus on the world's coolest social network. I'm your host this evening, Alan Furstenberg. Our regular host, Dan McDermott, can't join us. He's on location. Joining me tonight is Michael Ellis. Good evening, Michael.
Hello, Alan. How are you?
I'm doing relatively well. How are you doing?
I'm good. The sudden spotlight on Alan is going to be interesting tonight.
This isn't the first time I've hosted the show, but it is probably one of the more interesting ones. So we've got a few stories for you tonight for all 0 of you who are watching so far.
But remember, most of our viewership comes later.
That's what Dan always says, anyway. We'll see, because I get to see the viewer report this time.
That's right.
So we encourage you, if you're joining us, please feel free to comment, because we desperately need comments. We desperately need something to say. Michael is already at least one glass in this evening, so hopefully it will be an entertaining show.
It's a small glass, though, a cordial.
What is this? If you're going to drink, you might as well, do it right.
Well, I might have another one.
Oh, okay. So, top on our list of stories this evening is word of a rumor project. And normally we don't like covering rumors, but this is an interesting one, we thought, that Google is working on a project to let you receive bills and then pay them directly through Gmail. Did you hear about this one, Mike? Do you have any thoughts on it or further elaboration?
Well, I only got to glance at the article, but I did hear about it, and I already do things like this, so I'm very interested to see if Google will do this and if they'll do it well. I don't know exactly. I don't quite understand what it is they say they're going to do. Because currently you can get an email, you can get your bill. Let's say it's your ComEd bill, your Commonwealth Edison bill, electric and gas in this area of the country, and it comes to your email as a PDF, right? Typically, or something like that.
As a PDF or as a fancy formatted email or something like that, yeah.
Right, a fancy formatted email. So in the way I think this is expected to work is that they'll interpret that document that comes to you, either the fancy email or the PDF, understand that it's an invoice, a bill, and convert it into something that you can click on and pay. Is that what they're saying?
That's what it sounds like to me, yeah.
So I think that's cool. So that could essentially, what does that do? That could essentially make electronic payments available to you without how does your bank know? Oh, it's through Google Wallet, right?
It would be through Google Wallet, exactly.
So then your bank has to know nothing about you don't have to do anything at all with your bank for electronic billing or for bill payment system. So you don't have to use your bank's bill payment system in that case. You can use Google Wallet to be your bill payment system.
Correct. At least that's how I'm reading it as well. Now, I don't think I've seen a full confirmation about this, and details haven't been announced yet, but that's what it sounds like to me. But it does raise the question, though, if a lot of people are using their electronic payment through their banks already. They've got automatic payments set up. They've got the bills already coming to the bank. Why in the world would you use Google instead of your bank to do this?
Well, I can suggest a reason I might want to do it. I want to get more things running through my Google Wallet because my Google Wallet is more secure. Or so I think, anyway. So at least I'm deluded into thinking so. I say that because with Google, if someone wanted to break into my Google account, they have to break through my two-factor authentication, which is a pretty big deal. I have no idea what any of the other players in a financial transaction might have set up for their security, including any number of the banks that have been hacked already.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm really pretty disappointed that banks in general, they're going with best practices, but best practices for banks is really still nothing very, very good. It's not two-factor authentication, that's for sure.
Well, and they've made it very, very secure to be certain that I can't log in to my account.
Yes.
That degree of security they've done very well with, but they haven't at all made sure that nobody can backdoor into the bank's systems and get 200,000 bank accounts and passwords.
Well, at least in theory, they should have done that. We hope they've done that anyway.
Mm-hmm. But I don't trust them.
You
I
don't
mean,
trust
the
them.
truth is, I don't trust them. That's my big and you know what? They burned the relationship that the American public had with banks when they stole the trillions and trillions of dollars out of the economy and bankrupted people and made people lose their homes under false pretenses. And I don't trust them anymore. So now the big banks are shit, and I want to do everything I can to make sure they get no access to information, no access to my money at all. Anything I can do to keep them from having my money, I want to do. So Google Wallet makes that more possible. I'm all for it.
Okay, we've got one comment so far from Cybernaut. His comment is, Dan McDermott is right. Hard for him to be wrong when he hasn't said anything yet this evening. But thank you for your comments. I think this is an interesting approach from Google. I mean, on one hand, I really have to wonder if this is coming late to the game, because the banks have been here for ages already, and
yeah.
What is this?
But even if it's late to the game, they can't be in the game if they don't get in the game, right? They have to start somewhere, and bill payment is a place to start.
Yeah, but here's the thing: unless it's a radically better and different offering than what anyone else is offering, and here's the thing: this is Google. It could either be really awesome and really revolutionary and really, really all that, or it could suck. It's going to be one or the other.
Right.
There's not going to be a middle ground with Google. And
well, I will say that
they're not going to get a second chance. And if it's really awesome, then it has a fighting chance.
The thing that I really do like, and this is I'm done ranting about Google for the banks and Google for a moment, but I'm going to say something good about Google for a moment. The Google Wallet thing that I know, settle down, have another drink. You'll get over this. I really, really like the thing in Google Wallet that it is one layer of separation between anybody I'm paying and my bank account. So if somebody steals my Google Wallet card, my actual debit, well, it says it's a credit card, but it's really a debit card. If they take this card from me, they have my card, but that only has a very small amount of money on it. And they can't, and whoever gets this card can't use it till my credit limit, which would essentially be the limit of my bank account, right? Because it's really a debit card. If I have a debit card from my bank and somebody steals it, they can essentially spend, unless I shut it off, they can spend all the money in my bank account. With a Google Wallet card, they can't do that because this is connected to my bank account and I can transfer money in small increments at the moment I need the money. So I'm standing at Starbucks and I'm $3 short on this card to pay my Starbucks, to refill my Starbucks card, and I can add some small amount of money, or $300, up to $300 with no fee, to this card right while I'm standing at the Starbucks. It happens instantly, and I can refill my card. And this provides a layer of security between anybody that wants to spend my money, and access to my bank account. So it's really genuinely additional security, which I greatly appreciate.
I think the aspect of this that's most appealing to me is I've hated for years getting my bills sent by email. I despise it because they get lost with all my other email. So,
yeah, it's really hard to work with it.
So ideally, what I would love to see is if this is combined with Inbox in a smart way, or with the tabs in Gmail, so that when I get a legitimate bill, it shows up. I know that it shows up. I know that I can handle it. I can handle it immediately. If I'm using Inbox, I could say, okay, delay this to another date. If it's smart enough, it knows, no, you don't want to delay it to a week past when it's due. That's a bad idea. So it can, if it's
Right.
that smart, it can warn me about doing something stupid like that.
Yeah.
Those would be ideal features for this sort of thing. And one of the things I've always hated about automatic transfers through my bank is that I never get a chance to review the bill. And I've seen
Right.
enough errors on bills that I'd like to at least give it a courtesy glance before it goes and gets paid behind my back.
So it would be, what you'd envision it doing nicely would be to take the email that comes from in my example, from ComEd, and put it in a separate tab.
It's ConEd, Mike. Consolidated.
I'm sorry, ComEd is from Illinois, and it's going to be a long, habit-breaking process for me to change. ComEd and ConEd are very, very similar.
Yeah.
So ConEd, in this part of the world, this would send you the bill, and Google's email system or inbox would know that's what it was. Perhaps there would be a mechanism for you to approve it to go into your tab on Inbox or on Gmail that classifies it as a bill, and it would read off the email or the PDF, the date that it's due, the amount that's owed, right, and put all that into a place so that you could then click a button that says Pay through Google Wallet, and Pay through Google Wallet on the due date, and have it all be done.
Exactly.
But you get to review the bill by looking at it in that email.
Spot on.
But you'd never lose them again in your thousands of emails a week kind of thing.
Right. That's exactly it. I want to make sure that I get the email. I want to make sure I get a chance to review it. And if they do it right, this gives me the way to do that. It could even, this would even be even better, is if it said at some, if it said at some point, I could say I'm expecting this bill every month, every 2 months, every whatever, and it didn't get it, that it would say, hey, you didn't get this bill.
Oh, yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, that's a good idea.
From your list, check your spam folder. What do you want me to do about this?
Mm-hmm.
That would be another incredibly good bonus. But I don't expect that, and this is the problem. These are a bunch of really cool things that would really, change how we pay and manage our bills.
They would be differentiators for sure.
Right. If they did it, that would be amazing. I don't believe they'll do it.
No way.
It would be the right thing to do.
Seriously.
I don't think they'll do it.
Only a week or so ago did I finally get the capability to add my Google Wallet card as a valid payment method for my Google Shopping Express service.
Oh, hey, that's progress. Actually,
finally I can pay.
Only a week or so ago I'd given up on using Tap to Pay because it was more difficult everywhere that I was using it. And a week ago I tried it again, and it actually was faster than pulling out my credit card for the first time in a year. And the only reason I tried it was because the store prominently advertised that they supported Apple Pay. And I wanted to see if it also supported Google Wallet, and it did.
And was it good?
It was good. It worked correctly. I'd been using Tap to Pay every so often at Walgreens, and it's a pain there because you both have to enter your PIN in on the phone and enter the PIN in on the terminal, which kind of defeats the point.
Yeah, that's weird.
And there are still some places that I find that don't accept Google Tap to Pay, even though they accept Tap to Pay.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, apparently whatever credit card or debit card it looks like on the back end wasn't one that's accepted by this particular vending system.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I think we've beaten this subject to death.
Yeah, it's interesting though. Good.
Haven't seen any more comments. Please, if our one viewer, which I assume is Cybernaut, has anything to say, um, we are welcome.
Join in.
Join in, please. If you want to be on air tonight, Cybernaut, let Michael Ellis or I know. If you catch us in time, we might let you in. So other subject, Jason Salas messaged me this morning. He's been watching the Facebook, the F8 conference, which is their developer conference, and they had a couple of interesting sessions. And the one he alerted me about this morning was they have their own Project Loon like project, except it's not using hot air balloons. It's using unmanned aerial vehicles, which are solar powered and have the wingspan of a 737 and are all flying by themselves at 60,000 feet. So this is an interesting concept. Did you hear about this one, Michael?
I think I heard this before. I didn't read this particular article that's in the doc tonight, but I did read about them using unmanned aerial vehicles. So I knew they were trying that. And I think that's interesting. And you know what? As much as I despise Facebook, I'm more power to them. I want this. I want everybody that is interested in it and has the resources to be out there finding new ways to deliver internet connection to everyone in the world. This is good for the entire world if we can make this happen.
Yeah, and I'm glad that it's these these big companies that are trying things, and they're all trying different solutions. And it'll be a fight to see which ones make the most sense and which ones have the longest life and which ones actually deliver on the promises. I think this is great.
Right.
Mind you, I think the Facebook solution is a little bit unfeasible in a couple of ways, but I think it's a clever, it's trying something, and it's better than trying nothing.
I have some trouble with it in that I question whether Facebook can be a hardware company. If they even have the foggiest idea how to approach a project like that?
Well,
and, Google didn't have either before, but Google has demonstrated that it has some props in this area. I mean, in the ability to manage all kinds of strange, crazy projects that are way outside of software development, right? They've done all kinds of things, and Facebook hasn't done that as far as I know.
They've had a few attempts in the past. I mean, there was the phone that they partnered with, which was a smash hit. But you got to start somewhere, and you don't necessarily
just as
find
I said about Google Wallet and paying.
Right, and they're still working on it. Maybe someday they'll do it, but I'm not holding my breath. It's.
It was a bit like how long it took IBM to become an effective software and services company. It took a long, long time for them to figure out how to do it. Fortunately, they had lots of cash to spend over the years to make that conversion.
Right, and I think this is what people always ridicule Google for is why are you getting into this? How does that benefit your core business? Well, it doesn't now, but in 5 years when my core business has dried up, I now have other things that I have a decent foundation in, and I don't need to go start right then figuring out how I'm going to survive.
Right.
And I think we're seeing that with Facebook. With things like this, with things like their work with Oculus, it's clear they've got some other. They're trying to get some other brands in the fire.
Yep. Makes
I don't
sense.
know. I think this is an interesting approach. I think Google's approach is both a lot wackier, but also makes a lot more sense in some ways. This one. This is.
Do you think that the problem? I see a problem with the PR on this for Facebook because of the term calling it a drone just conjures up so many negative attitudes in the U.S. and Europe. Well, I suppose everywhere in the world now, but the balloon just has so much warmer and cozier feel to it, you know. A hot air balloon is something everybody aspires to one day ride in, and drones are the things you cower under your bed in fear.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the. Um, oh, it's going with codename Aquila. I'm not sure if if they're calling it a drone or if they're calling it anything.
Well, the
Besides
articles
that.
all call them drones, which is all that probably matters.
Yeah, okay, you got a point there. So, assorted other interesting. I think the other interesting thing that was mentioned in this article, and I've only heard a little bit about this, and I'm surprised I haven't heard more, is that developers can now make apps that integrate with their messenger system. And I'd really love to know more about that, because that, I think, it's an important feature. It's a significant feature, and it's one that we don't see too many other people doing right now with their messenger-like apps. And in fact, Google closed their API to Hangouts, or to Google Chat, which then became Hangouts. On the other hand, I think the biggest great thing about Google Video Hangouts is the fact that we can write apps for it, and that's probably the greatest feature that Hangout apps have.
Yeah, there's certainly some capabilities that are only available through the apps that I really want. I mean, I wanted those all along, and I want them to be there. And Google didn't develop them; somebody else did. So, well, and in fact, you're a part of a team that built one of these, right?
You mean in terms of Hangout apps?
Yeah. Didn't you help work on the what is it, the Hangout Toolbox?
Sure. I mean, we've had Hangout Toolbox. We've had there have been quite a number of others as I'm trying to look one up. Right
Whatever
now.
that one is.
Yeah. So we have these.
Is that the Andy Warhol app?
Yes. This is an Andy Warhol test app. That's exactly what it is. It's coded as Warhol on my file.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that's funny.
No, that's exactly what it's.
Related to Hangout apps, I get a little frustrated because some apps come and go. The Google Drive app that was part of this just disappeared one day, and I couldn't find it again, and they got rid of it.
Well, I think that's part of the problem, is that the feature itself is there. It's still there, but it's not heavily promoted. It never caught on. The discovery for it's always been a pain. There's always been a lot of issues with it.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Well,
I mean, there's no discovery of things. You discover things only if they're featured apps. You can't search for apps.
Right.
You can look for any apps you happen to have had recently, if you got lucky enough to have them one day, and you can search for anything that's featured, which is like 3 pages of apps, and that changes regularly, but you don't know when. And you can't search. There's no place to search for them.
The featured apps haven't changed in a year. In fact, the API hasn't even changed in a year, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still, I think, one of the greatest features that Hangouts have, and yet it's grossly underutilized. There are maybe 3 applications that are commonly used.
Well, they got rid of remote desktop sharing through Hangouts. They got rid of that. Now you have to have Chrome to do that.
I think you always had to have Chrome, didn't you?
No, it's a Hangout app. Well, it was a Hangout app, remote desktop.
But I thought it was a Hangout app that still required Chrome.
Oh, I guess I don't know that. Maybe that's true. Now you see the remote desktop app on the toolbar on the left, but you click it, it opens up a window and like it used to do to open the remote desktop, and it tells you there you can't do this here anymore. You have to go do it through Chrome. And then you have to install a Chrome app and run it from Chrome, and it's not part of the integrated Hangout experience anymore. So
Interesting. I didn't
it's
know
like
that one.
it's annoying, but it's not the most annoying thing to do with Google this week. So I won't go off on a
What is the
rant.
most annoying thing to do with Google? You know what? Let's skip the rest of these stories. How was your Google Plus week, Michael?
um,
Okay, no, well, okay,
it was
all right.
fine.
We can run through the
Should
rest
we
of it.
cover?
I don't know what else is there here.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
What else
Google
do we
wants to
have?
bring TV ads into the 21st century. So basically, now that they own a cable, they want to deliver you local ads. They want to deliver you relevant ads. So they're taking their AdSense technology and putting it on the big screen. Good, bad. What
Okay.
do you think?
Well, that's got to be a good idea, doesn't it? I mean, I think all of this stuff that Google does with making ads more relevant is useful to me. I don't want to watch ads that have nothing to do with me ever. I don't care if I never ever see another tampon ad. Truthfully, I've never bought one. I don't think I'll ever have a reason to buy one. Yes, okay, for those in the audience who are going to tell me 16 ways to use a tampon for men, I don't need to know that. That's okay. Skip that post.
That's on a
Um,
different show. We won't be covering that on this one.
no, it's a list coming from The Verge or somebody like that, right?
It'll be a list coming from Cybernaut because he's still our only viewer tonight.
But I'm happy to get ads that are relevant to me, and I will say it's remarkable. Even when I have Hangout conversations with people like this, and something gets talked about in the Hangout, and the same day, later in the day, I'm doing a search of some other kind, and ads show up on the screen that are directly related to the topic we were discussing with voice only.
That's pretty freaky.
And I'm
I think
convinced they're listening in.
I think that's coincidence, Michael. I really do. Because I don't think they're
Happens more
tapping into
often than you
these.
think.
I don't know. That one's freaky.
I've been trying to drop certain topics that I know I've never mentioned in email or typed on my keyboard, and just to steer the conversation to speak about those things, but not write about them.
So here's the thing, Michael. If you and I start getting a bunch of tampon ads over the next couple of days,
Then we're going to know that I'm right about this.
Yeah. So there's the test for you. Actually,
Okay,
this
we're
isn't
gonna
one of our
watch.
stories. This isn't one of our stories, but that was an interesting test that I saw. I'm trying to remember if I could find. I'm not going to be able to find it, unfortunately. Somebody did a test about seeing whether Google was indexing URLs that were only seen in email. If what it was doing was sniffing your email, finding URLs in there, and then indexing them if there was no other way that those links could come up. And I believe it was Mark Trappingham and a bunch of others from that group did a pretty comprehensive test on this. And they concluded that Google is the Google bot that does web indexing is not tied to the Google bot that does email scanning. So that was a really interesting piece of investigative work. And
that has to be purposeful on Google's part, right? Like they're separating those segments of the business on purpose so that people will not be as suspicious of them.
Yeah, that would be my guess. Is they made a conscious decision that URLs that are discussed in email need to remain private.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, you might remember way back in the early days of the Google search bar, it did tap into URLs that you would type in, and I believe even in Chrome in the earliest days, URLs that you typed in might get indexed, and they don't do that now because there was a lot of flack about that. You might also remember that they discovered that Bing was doing something similar to that and was using, I think it was either the Bing search bar or something else, or tapping into Google search results and indexing based on Google search results when it could have gotten no other possible way of coming up with these URLs.
That's interesting. Yeah,
and some Google
I didn't know
engineers.
that, but that doesn't surprise
This
me.
is an intro. I think we covered this a few years back. Um, Google engineers uncovered this one because they were suspecting Bing was doing this. So they put in some poison uh, URLs into search results,
Poison pills.
basically for certain key topics that they knew were being searched for. They put in URLs that would come up in Google search for those, and suddenly Bing started returning them. So they knew somehow Bing was pulling its results from Google. Um,
Hmm.
so let's see what other fun stories we have in here. Let's see. The rise of revenge Yelp and why it will only make restaurants worse. So you were a restaurateur in a former life, as Dan would
Yes.
almost certainly be saying right now. What are your thoughts about Yelp reviews in general?
Um, well, I love the notion of real consumer reviews for all kinds of consumer-oriented businesses. I think it's good for the consumer, and what is good for the consumer eventually is good for all of the businesses involved. So, restaurants uh, restaurants have a hard time with Yelp because it forces them into the 21st century. Any review they get is immediate and loud. So, and it's true, it's loud if it's positive and it's loud if it's negative. They tend to be louder if they're negative, but that's true. That's true if somebody tells 50 of their neighbors how bad an experience they had in your place, and they tell 3 people that they had a nice time at dinner the other night. That's just the way life works. Too bad. If you're in the restaurant business, you got to get over it. But I think Yelp is specifically evil in their approach to their world, their market, because they game the system. They move reviews up if you buy advertising. They move good reviews up if you buy advertising from them, and they move bad reviews up if you turn off purchases of advertising from them. And I've known this isn't my okay, as a disclaimer, this is not my personal experience. I didn't buy Yelp didn't work in our community when I was involved in the restaurant business, so we didn't need it. We didn't have it. Didn't make sense. Nobody was using it then in our community. But in San Francisco, it was absolutely, you had to be on Yelp. You couldn't survive if you weren't on Yelp. And but it became very clear to me as I worked with some of the restaurateurs out there. I did some consulting for restaurants in that case, and what I learned was that it was the reviews that they got were very directly tied. Not the reviews they got. The reviews that displayed when someone searched for your place was directly influenced by whether you bought the latest sales package from the Yelp rep that called on you last week, and it was very immediate.
This is an interesting article because one of the things that it's saying is that restaurateurs are now essentially using other social media tools to fight back. So, for example, when someone
Yeah.
posts a review saying, they weren't, they stood there for 20 minutes and weren't seated, and then the restaurant fires back and says, no, here's the video of this person. They walked in, didn't talk to anybody, and then walked out, and used this as a basis
Hmm.
for, they walked in, entered their Yelp review, and then walked out. Uh, you know,
Right.
so it's an interesting. The article calls it an escalation
I,
of the war. I like the term.
yeah. Yeah, I agree that it is an escalation of the war, but I have to say, in my experience, pretty extensive experience dealing with consumers in that type of business, in a hospitality business, the restaurant owners are wrong-headed to go down this path. You can't win if you suddenly declare war on your customers. You
But
always lose. There's no outcome that's a win,
you ever see
even
war
if you're
games?
right. Doesn't make any doesn't yes. There's no outcome that's good for the business if you declare war on your customers. If the customer says you're wrong, you have to just suck it up and deal with it. Now, if the customer's somehow abusive to your staff, things that you really can't accept I'm going to say morally, you can't accept them, then you have to fight back against those. But there's no reason why you should dispute the experience that a customer claims they had. Unless you really have, like the example you just gave, that the person walked in, made a Yelp review from the lobby and left. They were clearly, that was not a real consumer. That was someone planted probably by a competitor.
Well, here's another example that the article gives, and before I go to that, I want to give a shout out to David and Kathy, who appear to be joining us now. We're up to 3 whole viewers. So David, Kathy, Cy, if you've got any thoughts on this, please share them. We welcome comments. One of the other examples that they give are, a bunch of visitors to a restaurant who essentially started saying, look, you either comp our meal or we're going to trash you on Yelp right here. And when they did, they went and trashed them on Yelp right there. So, how do you get around, how do you deal with people, deal with consumers who are going to game the system?
Yeah. The fact of the matter is that it's still very few people who will actually do that. And my view is that that's a cost of doing business. You better focus because it takes a ton of animal strength to be in the restaurant business. You shouldn't waste any of that on fighting against the trolls that walk in your door and act like jackasses like that. The best thing to do is apologize, do what you can to correct the experience, do whatever you can to correct the experience, and quickly move on to serve the next guest with a smile.
I think that's, a good way of dealing with trolls in general, I suppose.
Yeah. You can't stop people from being trolls.
Okay, so I guess our final, following up on that, is another Yelp story that apparently there's an investigative documentary coming out about the issue that you raised earlier and what they were doing, and apparently Yelp is kind of concerned about what this is going to say about them, what this is going to reveal.
Yeah. I think a real documentary is going to show a lot of negative stuff about them. And I only have anecdotal experience with this. It's personal experience, not my business, but one that I was involved with. And I watched what happened, and it definitely was so correlated as to at least appear to be causal, and I couldn't prove it, but I believe it. I believe it with every fiber of my being that that's how it works. And there were just too many stories of people having the same experience and being able to back it up with, I did this on this day, and the next day this review that was good was deleted from my account. It was gone, even though the consumer that posted it didn't delete it. So it was gone, and the bad reviews bubbled up.
So
that kind of stuff's just awful.
So if you're interested in hearing more from this documentary, it is on Kickstarter right now. The film is called $Billion Bully. 24 days or so left to sponsor them if you're interested in hearing a documentary about it. So Michael Ellis, you indicated you had some Google problems this week. How was your Google Plus week?
I never have a week that doesn't have Google problems in it. I've been away from the show for a couple weeks, and I have a Google Plus friend who's recently decided that his only possible recourse is to divorce himself from Google for everything serious. So he went out and bought an iPhone, and he's carrying 2 phones now because the Android experience just isn't working. The Google Hangouts don't work, the notifications don't work. You get in these video calls and they frequently don't work. I had an experience just recently, I think since the last time I was on the show, where I made a phone call through Google Hangouts from my Chromebook. by the way, it's a Pixel. So it's until December, this was the finest Chromebook on the market, and certainly the most expensive. So it's not that I'm not all in for the Google experience. I've done everything I can. And I made this phone call to a brand new potential customer. In a 45-minute call, we got dropped from that connection 6 times. And I called back every time and apologized. And by the end, I got so infuriated, I said, I can never use this again for a phone call that's important. You can't depend on them. Just today, I was in a Hangout, and the audio got delayed, a serious delay, like 5 or 7 seconds delay between when my visual came through as speaking and the voice traveled behind me. And there's nothing wrong with my internet connection. I have Fios here. It's absolutely speedy. There's nothing wrong with my connection. 50 meg up, 50 meg down. There's nothing wrong with my connection. There's nothing wrong with my computer, and it doesn't happen all the time. It happens sometimes.
And always at the worst possible time.
Of course.
So you know that Murphy was a programmer.
For good reason, yeah. That's how he came up with the rules.
Right. He wasn't actually. He was an airplane technician. But
anyway, so griping about Google has become sort of a pastime, but I'm trying hard not to make that my passion. I love things that Google does. So
the problem is griping about Google is really, really easy. Right?
They make it easy.
They make it
really
easy for us.
But there are some things that are so blow me over or bowl me over so great that I can hardly believe how I lived without this stuff. That's how good some things are that they do. And then they do things that just, like, they promise and promise and promise, and they just don't deliver even the most bare bones capability. Like, I get it that this Hangout thing is really complex. I get that completely. But when they tell me that they have unified the experience between text messaging and chat messaging, they have done that pretty well on the phone, but the desktop experience is horrible. Horrible. So bad that you very often cannot find a contact to send a text message to from the desktop. It simply will not find them in your address book.
And I think this goes back to something we said earlier. Google either does things that are way out there, that are awesome,
Absolutely.
that are incredible, or they just suck completely.
Yes.
And it's one or the other. It's never in the middle.
They're never in the middle. They don't do anything middle ground, which I guess I'm going to just have to learn to live with. But what it does mean is that they're not reliable. And because they're not reliable, I can't base anything that I do for business on Google tools, except things that clearly have worked for a long time, like Gmail works. So far, right, at least knock on wood, Gmail and calendaring still works. They've got that right.
They were pushing the boundary on calendar on mobile. I think they took a big step back. You're not a mobile.
I'm the outlier. I don't use mobile for anything. No, I don't use mobile. I use it, but I use it only grudgingly. And the only reason I use it for some things is because they haven't made the functions work in the desktop side of things.
The mantra these days is mobile first. There's a reason.
Yeah, it's horrible.
But I know
these are terrible devices for most computing tasks.
You're preaching to the choir on that one, Michael. I agree with you.
I know.
But my experience with Google, again, is another one of those Boolean ones. I was working with their Google Cloud Platform and Google Compute Engine and integrating it with Google Cloud SQL. And Google Cloud SQL comes with an IPv6 address, and Google Compute Engine comes with an IPv4 address.
Oh, yeah, I saw your post on this. Right.
Looking at it going, you're kidding me, right? This is nonsense. It's like, these two teams don't ever talk to each other. And from the way I read the documentation, it's like they don't. So,
well, I'm sorry, but that's bad management.
It is bad management. And I very firmly blame management on this one. I blame, well, then
Yeah.
again, I very firmly blame management for Google Plus problems, and I very firmly blame management for a lot of the issues, a lot of the problems that I see in Google.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Anyway,
I don't have much in the way of Google Plus experiences this week. I use it every day. I mean, I post frequently, and it mostly works, and I don't have too much trouble with that.
it's kind of hard to break it at this point, although, they're trying their damnedest. Doing a
Yeah.
doing a final sweep for comments here. I'd like to thank Dan McDermott, who has shared tonight's post. Even though I don't think he's one of our viewers, our two viewers this evening. So once again, thank you to all of our viewers this evening. This is Google Plus Week. We appear
Both all of our viewers we have had and all of the future viewers of this video.
This is Google Plus Week. We are every Friday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. We also have our companion show on Monday evenings, which officially airs at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. But Dan keeps wanting to do it earlier and earlier and getting it out of the way because, it's Android. And just getting it over with is better than actually trying to, do something with the show. That's Mondays, however, so keep an eye out for that whenever it decides to show up. We'd like to thank you for watching. We'd like to thank Cy for commenting. And we hope you have an absolutely fantastic and absolutely marvelous Google Plus week.